And good morning, Vaqueros. It is top of the hour, 11:06 here in Edinburgh, Texas. Weather's 87 degrees and sunny. Welcome one, welcome all to All In with Ali. Hope you guys are having a great first week of school. First week of school, first week of class. Everyone's, getting back into the rhythm of things. And, we'll start tonight's segment with a bit of a somber note because we learned yesterday about Juan Izquierdo passed away after collapsing on a pitch in the middle of a match. So before we start tonight's segment, we'd like to take a minute. Thank you. And it's always tough, seeing athletes, they work day in, day out, and to see them collapse on the pitch and for it to happen, first thing that came to mind when we saw it was what happened to Christian Eriksen or what happened to Damar Hamlin, seeing athletes being carted off the field. It's always a tough sight to see, and our condolences are with his family at this time. And on another note, we'd like to start talking about what happened over the summer. I had a great, hope you guys had a great summer as well, coming back to class now. Let's getting back into the rhythm of things. I'd like to start talking a bit about some exciting things that happened in the world of sports over the summer, starting with Copa America. The final was between Argentina and with Colombia. James, who had an incredible tournament to this point, signed with Rayo Vallecano. He'll be playing out of there for this season. And Darwin Nunez was also suspended recently for 5 games after a fight that occurred in the stands, which involved several players protecting their families as well. And we remember also the security situation that happened in the final with fans rushing the stadium. And we know that CONMEBOL is the one, in charge of the security for this event. But one thing I think that this shows is that if the United States is going to host a World Cup, which it's coming in about 2 years, and I'm excited for, I'd love to go to a game once that opportunity comes around, that the United States still needs, and tournament organizers and FIFA need to make sure that the security gets better, because what we saw take place at the final of the Copa America should not happen at any match at any point. On another note, let's talk about the Olympics. USA basketball took gold. It was LeBron James, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant. They did what they always do, which is just greatness on a basketball court. Steph Curry, incredible shooting display. He was ice cold for like the first few games of the tournament, but once the team needed it, he started raining down threes. Like, it started in the semifinal against Serbia with USA down by, I believe it was 17 points they were down by to start heading into the second half, and then Curry just started raining bucket after bucket after bucket, including some huge buckets in the fourth quarter that led them to the final. And then, of course, we saw against France the night dagger against a French double team. Steph Curry, seeing that shot in person, you see Kevin Durant and LeBron James wide open. And any reasonable player would pass the ball to, two of the greatest bucket getters, to the greatest bucket getter in the game, and to the greatest player of all time, LeBron James, seeing them wide open there. But no, Steph Curry took the shot over the double team, and only Steph Curry, the only person who can reasonably make that shot, who you wouldn't question taking that shot over a double team, Steph Curry. And if you'd like to read more of the thoughts, that's available on The Rider, on last week's issue of The Rider. So if you want to read up more about my thoughts on Olympic basketball, you can go ahead and check them out, utrgvwriter.com, or pick up a copy on campus. Let's continue talking about the Olympics here. Spain had a great tournament in the the soccer portion of the Olympic tournament, beating out Thierry Henry's France side, the favorite home side in the final. And while we're also talking about Spain, they had a great tournament at the Euros as well, and Lamine Yamal had an incredible tournament. I believe he should have won. He had some incredible goals in that tournament. So did Olmo. So did so many other players for Spain, and you know it's seeing them come out of the Olympics winning with their U23s and seeing them come out to win the Euros in the fashion that they did this year. Is it really too early to book Spain as the World Cup favorites? I think it's too early, but I believe they should definitely be one of those teams that we should look out for when it comes down to it. When it comes down to watching when we get to the World Cup in 2026. That's something I'm excited for. I want to get out to see one of those matches. Hopefully all goes well. There should be matches in Monterrey and in Houston and in Dallas around this area. So if you ever get the opportunity to go, then go. It's a once in a lifetime thing. I'm sure people have eagerly anticipated this for a while, and we are certainly looking forward to that. We'll take you to a quick music break. Guns N' Roses, Sweet Child of Mine, and then we'll talk some more after this quick break. And welcome back to All In with Ali, live from Edinburgh, Texas. It was a very busy summer for UTRGV athletics. They unveiled some new facilities that the football team and the soccer team are going to be using, practice turf by the baseball stadium. It looks pretty good, and it looks like right now what athletics has been doing a lot recently is they've been seriously ramping up the construction of a lot of their facilities. You see, there's a lot of work being done outside the field house right now as well. So, and they said should be done by early summer 2025. So next year, once you folks go out to a volleyball or a basketball game here at UTRGV, you should see the work being done and had the chance to check out the work to the field house recently, and progress has been good. And we're hoping that everything there turns out all for the best, for not just for the fans, for the student athletes as well. Football is also starting to ramp up here at UTRGV with the first full team practice will take place at the Richard Flores Stadium on September 9th here in Edinburgh, Texas. So that's going to be it's going to be open to the public, and it's going to be the first chance we're going to get to see Coach Bush's squad in a full practice, full uniforms with pads. We get to see the football team play or practice in action. Players are already starting to arrive here if they haven't already moved on to the Edinburgh campus. And yeah, there's been a lot of hype surrounding this program, and we can hope that we're hoping that it all turns out for the best, that the results are going to be on the field. First season will be in 2025, and we're all just hoping that things turn out pretty well on that front. Speaking of college football, let's segue into what happened last Saturday in Ireland. Georgia Tech upsetting Florida State in a result that I didn't think was going to happen. It had been probably a decade, if I remember correctly, since Georgia Tech beat Florida State. And considering the controversy of them being selected out of the playoffs, then proceeding to get destroyed in the bowl game that they played next, could you say Florida State hasn't been, at their best since last year. And at the time, I thought Florida State should have made the playoffs at the time. They were the conference champions of a Power 5. But, everything that's gone on since. Also, another couple matchups I'd like to start highlighting is ESPN's College Game Day game, Texas A&M and Notre Dame. That should be, if you really like defense in college football, that should be the game you tune to. Two of the best defenses in the country. The over-under is about 46 points total, so country is expecting a low-scoring game. I'm expecting a low-scoring game, and it's going to be one of those games that it's going to be decided on third downs on defense. You see how some football games, they start and you already know from the onset of the first quarter what kind of game it's going to be. When I was in Houston about in January when the Texans played the Browns in the playoffs, I was in the stands for that game, and when there was a lot of early scoring in the first quarter, it was back and forth. You already knew that I was already thinking that, man, this is going to be a very high scoring affair, that it's going to be back and forth. Well, two pick sixes later forced by the Texans defense, and it was a high scoring game. It just wasn't the game the Browns would have liked to have seen going into it. And then another one, UT playing their first game as a member of the SEC. It's not a conference game. They're playing Colorado State, but Texas now in the SEC, where the competition certainly is stiff. A lot of good schools in the SEC as a college football. It's been probably, I think, one of, if not the best conferences in college football. You have your Bamas at the top, and any school can make it interesting any given day, and that's what we're hoping to see. We don't know whether or not Texas will do well in the SEC. It's going to be a lot more competition than certainly they're used to over the last how many years in their old conference. But we're all just hoping to see some very good college football coming out on Saturday. Oh, we'll have a PSA for you, Dr. Bailey. Dr. Bailey, what do you have for us? Let's hear it here on Vaquero Radio. La Carcacha by Selena to close out the break. Welcome back to All In with Ali. In this segment now, we're going to be talking the Premier League, and I'd like to start off with the Manchester United this week losing to Brighton, which I don't know how it is that the last few years Brighton has just been on United time and time again. You see that fixture on the calendar, you assume Brighton's going to come out with a win, because it's just something that United hasn't been able to beat Brighton. They haven't. The last few years have been, tough for United. I think personally they had a pretty good transfer window, but it's a lot to be seen whether or not that those signings will pay out. They did address many needs, like particularly in defense and center defensive mid, which that's been their biggest area of weakness, I believe. Biggest area of weakness for that team, and which I find funny, despite the bad season that they had last year, as poor as they were, they still came out with a trophy, and Arsenal, having their best season one of their best seasons in the last 10 years, came out with none. So that's just some irony from last season to talk about. Chelsea is who I want to talk about next, and they've signed everyone and their mother. I mean, you would not believe it. I mean, Chelsea has probably signed enough players to fill the field house at this point, capacity crowd, and you probably, if you've paid attention, you've seen all the jokes and the memes, and I just don't understand what Chelsea is doing. Really, I don't get it. Like they signed everyone yet addressed no needs. It's confounding how they just go out and say, "Oh, let's go sign everyone, sign this and that and that and that," and it's got to the point where they're so stacked in one area yet so lacking in others. It's I don't know how they're going to figure out their situation in that regard. And next I want to talk about Man City. Man City, 115 charges. Those hearings are going to be coming pretty soon, and we are seeing now that that United, Arsenal, and Tottenham have come out, saying they will provide evidence against City, or saying that they will support support the FA in bringing these charges against City for financial fair play violations. 115 is just crazy. It's probably not. I think somehow City avoids the brunt of the punishment and they don't get any points deduction. It's just going to be a fine, which fines are just the cost of doing business in that regard. If I believe they should at least face some points deduction. If Everton got deducted X amount of points last year for doing the same thing, then so should City. It's only fair. It's only fair. And who knows how things are going to turn out at that point. Who knows what's going to happen, but we're hoping to see an end to that situation pretty soon, because having that hanging over the head of the Premier League, it's going to paint a massive black eye on the sport as a whole. And in the Carabao Cup, we're talking now AFC Wimbledon, who, if you don't know, that it's a story that they've had coming up the ranks of English football the last 15 years or so. Ever since the old AFC Wimbledon got franchised and moved out to another city, leaving their fans high and dry. So fans started a Phoenix club. They started from non-league, and now they're, I believe, League 2. Then they recently in the Carabao Cup, they upset Ipswich Town, who is a team in the Premier League who have last few games have not performed so well. I think we probably see Ipswich is going to get relegated. Like, even though they did play pretty well in the championship to get to this level, I think we do end up seeing AFC Wimbledon relegated out of the Premier League. All right, next segment we'll talk. Stay tuned, folks. We'll talk Major League Baseball, some fantasy football, and much more coming up after these messages. Closing out the break with the Strokes there. Welcome back to All In with Ali, bottom of the hour here in Edinburgh, Texas. And we're going to continue our discussion with sports. Let's talk some baseball. A lot of interesting things happened there over the summer. Well, starting with the American League and the Houston Astros. I think they've been one of the biggest stories this year. I mean, to start out the way that the Astros did, I think it was 12-24, and then to come back. Since May 9th, I think the Astros have been the hottest team in baseball. I know they've hit a skid over the last week or so, but they had a huge win against Philadelphia. Spencer Arrighetti looked absolutely incredible. Took a no-hitter to the 8th inning and struck out more than 10 in that outing. He was lights out in the offense. Yordan Alvarez doing what Yordan Alvarez does. I mean, he's just an incredible player. And Altuve starting that game out, setting the tone by stealing home. I think we'll say that Jose Altuve, he's been my favorite player in baseball. He always has been, always will be. I think he's going to retire a Hall of Famer for sure. Astros resurged, and the Royals have been really good in the AL Central. Those are two really tight races, and I think in two of the best teams in the American League have been the Astros and the Royals. They're going to meet for 4 games starting tonight at 7:10 p.m. for a 4-game set, and I think that's going to be the series to watch this weekend. I mean, two incredible teams with MVP talent like Yordan Alvarez and Bobby Witt Jr. and some incredible pitching. I mean, last year the Royals were not really good, and then this year they went out, they improved their pitching staff, and now they're inching closer and closer to Cleveland if they haven't already. And then of course, talking about the other division in the American League, the Orioles and the Yankees have been neck and neck all year. It's been two incredible teams. I think probably at the end of the day, the Orioles, this might be their year to take the AL East over the Yankees like they did last year. But the Yankees, they've got some incredible hitting in that lineup. Aaron Judge and Juan Soto have been pretty good over the course of the season. And now we can talk a little bit more about the National League, and in particular, I'd like to focus on the NL West. I mean, I think the tightest race that there is in the National League is in the West. I think the Diamondbacks are behind the Dodgers only by 3 games. Which, funny enough, that's the biggest lead that the American League, any team in the American League has over their counterparts in the National League is 3.5 games, which is the Astros over the Mariners. Yankees barely lead the Orioles by a game, and if I'm not mistaken, then in the Central, the Guardians only have a one game lead over the Royals. So, like I said earlier, this series that's coming up this weekend is going to be huge for both teams. So, it's an old saying that you beat the teams that you're supposed to beat and play 500 ball against the teams that are good. I think that might be something that we're going to get to see a bit this weekend. We're going to see some incredible baseball in that series. But back to the National League, back to the NL West. The Diamondbacks with their offense have been really good all year, and the Padres have been not too far behind LA. But, LA has this guy called Shohei Ohtani who's absolutely incredible. Despite the fact that he hasn't pitched this year, he's been one of the best hitters in the National League. He just joined the 40-40 club. And it's not even September, so I think the Dodgers have they got their guy for the next 10 years, and the fans know it too. Yesterday was bobblehead night for Shohei Ohtani, and the line to get into Dodger Stadium started way before the game started, like at 12 o'clock LA time, and the line was out the gates at Dodger Stadium, which if you're familiar with the LA area, it's just a big parking lot that surrounds Dodger Stadium, almost nothing else. So the fact that people were lining up out the gate to get there, that just shows how much Ohtani means to the Dodgers, how much Ohtani means to their faithful. And as much as I wish the Astros had signed him, they weren't going to. It's still great that we get to see someone at this level do what Ohtani does. It's draft week for those of you playing fantasy football. I'm going to be drafting my team tomorrow night. And to all of you playing fantasy football this year, best of luck, and don't finish last. We have some time here, so I'm going to give you some recommendations. I got three players that I would personally avoid drafting this year for fantasy football. Number 1, Anthony Richardson. There's always concern, about quarterbacks coming off major injury, especially rushing quarterbacks like Anthony Richardson. But throughout training camp, his arm has not shown a lot. It hasn't shown enough for me to confidently be able to take him over, say, Kyler Murray or Jalen Hurts, because those two are probably going to be the best fantasy quarterbacks because they got the arm as well to carry it, as well as the ability to rush. But with Anthony Richardson, we're seeing a lot of red flags with his arm, and I might be wrong, about this. Come back later and say I was wrong about Anthony Richardson in fantasy, go for it. But I personally would avoid drafting him for that reason, especially because he's coming off a major injury. Number 2, Stephon Diggs of the Houston Texans. Now, this hurts me to say it as a Texans fan, because I love Stephon Diggs, and I love the moves that the Houston Texans have made this offseason. And as good as we know that Stephon Diggs can be, he's getting old, and it figures like Nico Collins is going to be the number 1 wide receiver in that Texans offense. And there might be, you never know what DeMeco Ryans is going to do. The Texans wide receiver room, I think, right now is the most stacked wide receiver core in the NFL right now. To have Tank Dell, who was a number 2, number 1 before he got injured last year, as your wide receiver 3 is incredible. So DeMeco might be spreading more of those carries and more of those passes. Or C.J. Stroud might be giving those passes to Tank Dell and to Nico Collins that Stephon Diggs would otherwise get. And that's number 2. Number 3, Raheem Mostert of the Miami Dolphins. Mostert last year, I picked him up off of waivers. A lot of people picked him up off of waivers, and he made a huge impact because Mike McDaniel loves the run. He loves speed, and he loves the speed that the guys in his offense can give him. Like the Dolphins' offense is built off of speed. Like you see, they have out wide Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, who Tyreek Hill is no doubt going to be going off the boards in the first round. If your league mates know what they're doing, he's not going to drop any lower than the 5th. And Jalen Waddle's a really good pickup if you want some more some more depth at your wide receiver position. But Raheem Mostert, he's only getting older, and I think Mike McDaniel is thinking about that in that Miami offense. He's certainly thinking about it, and that's been on his mind. He's probably going to give more of those to Devon Achane, who Devon Achane was another great waiver pickup for fantasy teams last year, and I was going to pick him up, but somebody else in my league scooped him up before I could, so I missed out on it. And I had to face him one week, and I ended up losing that week. So, yeah, Achane's got the ability to. He's probably one of the fastest running backs in the NFL. He's probably going to get more of those carries, and as well, you got to consider Tua Tagovailoa. He's a quarterback who can get you on the rush too, as well as the arm. So, those carries that Raheem Mostert might get might otherwise be going to Achane or seeing Tua take the ball himself. So that's why I would personally avoid drafting Raheem Mostert in the late rounds. Well, next week is the NFL, and the NFL kicks off next week, and we're going to have a great program for you folks, for all you football fans out there. We're going to talk a lot of football. We're going to also talk some college. We're going to talk some MLB. Transfer window will also close. I believe it closes Saturday. Saturday, the transfer window closes, and we're going to do another overview of the transactions the teams have made. We're going to do a deeper dive into that, as well as get you ready for kickoff on Thursday night. So stay tuned here. We're also going to talk some baseball. Tonight here at UTRGV, however, women's soccer, Southern University, they play here in Edinburgh. Come out to the game, show up and show out for your Vaqueros. That game starts at 6:30 p.m. tonight at the Soccer and Track and Field Complex on Jackson Road here on the Edinburgh campus. So don't miss it, folks. We're going to have a great slate of sports. We're going to talk football, college, MLB, transfer window on next week's edition of All In with Ali. Unfortunately, folks, that is all that, for the most part, we got time for. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week on All In with Ali. This has been your host. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks. Have a great one.